In 1985, the animated series M.A.S.K debuted on television. The cartoon series revolved around an ongoing battle between a top-secret task force called M.A.S.K, which stood for Mobile Armored Strike Command, against a ruthless criminal organisation, Venom, which stood for Vicious Evil Network of Mayhem. Both the M.A.S.K team and Venom organisation used superpower masks, each with a unique ability, while also using highly advanced transforming vehicles in their battles. Each M.A.S.K and Venom team member had their own mask and vehicle. Matt Tracker, a wealthy millionaire, led the M.A.S.K team against Miles Mayhem, the leader of Venom. Matt Tracker and his M.A.S.K team operated from a secret headquarters disguised as an ordinary-looking gas station, which if attacked could instantly transform into a heavily armoured base. In each episode, when Venom was discovered to be involved in some nefarious scheme, Matt would go to his study in his mansion and activate his computer and ask it to pick the most suitable M.A.S.K agents for the mission. All the M.A.S.K agents had regular jobs, but when their special M.A.S.K watches started beeping, they would drop whatever they were doing and rush off to M.A.S.K headquarters to meet up with Matt, who would brief them about their mission. Then Matt would energise their masks, and they would take off in their vehicles ready to take on Venom. Matt Tracker piloted Thunderhawk, a red Chevrolet Camaro which could transform into a fighter jet. Matt's mask is Spectrum, which fires a sonic sound wave which could deafen people. His Spectrum mask also could give him limited flight abilities, plus allow him to see in different visual spectrums. Matt is unique in that he has several masks, such as Ultra Flash, which fires a blinding blast of energy, Dolphin, which controls water and emits sonic signals, Arrow, which fires acidic bolts, Shroud, which creates a cloud of darkness, Lava Shot that fired pieces of molten metal. Bruce Sato, a mechanical engineer and design specialist, drove Rhino, a Kenworth semi-tractor that transformed into a mobile defence base and command centre. His mask is Lifter, which fires an anti-gravity tractor beam. Brad Turner, a rock musician, piloted Condor, a motorcycle that transformed into an attack helicopter. His mask is Hocus Pocus, that could project holograms to confuse his enemies. Hondo McLean, a history teacher, drove Firecracker, a pickup truck that transformed into a weapons platform. His mask is Blaster, which fires a beam of energy. Buddy Hawks, a master of disguise and mechanic, was Firecracker's co-pilot. His mask is Penetrator, which enabled him to pass through solid objects. Dusty Hayes, a pizza cook or a marine stunt driver, drove a Jeep with a releasable attack boat. His mask is Backlash, that fires a kinetic blast of energy. Alex Sector, a zoologist and a computer specialist, is the Rhino co-pilot. His mask is Jackrabbit, which gives him the ability to fly. Gloria Baker, a race car driver and black belt in Kung Fu, is the only female member of the M.A.S.K team. She drove Shark, a Porsche that could transform into a submarine. Her mask is Aura, which fires an energy-absorbing shield. Venom were not your typical world-conquering villains obsessed with world domination like the Cobra terrorist organisation in G.I. Joe, but instead usually involved in illegal criminal heists and acting as mercenaries on occasions. There were 9 members of Venom in total, but the 4 core members of the team were Miles Mayhem, Sly Rax, Cliff Dagger and Vanessa Warfield. Miles Mayhem, the leader of Venom, was a criminal genius and certainly the brains of the team. He piloted Switchblade, a helicopter that in a blink of an eye could instantly transform into a fighter jet. He is shown to have considerable skill as a fighter pilot, implying that he once had a military background prior to his formation of the Venom team. Miles' mask is Viper, that spits out a corrosive acid. Sly Rax drove Piranha, a motorcycle with a sidecar that he could jump into and detach from the motorcycle and pilot as a submarine. His mask is Stiletto, that shoots armor-piercing blades. In the comics he was an ambitious con artist, and like Starscream in Transformers, wanted to dethrone and replace Miles as leader of Venom. Cliff Dagger, the least intelligent member of the Venom team, drove Jackhammer, a Ford Bronco which could instantly transform into a heavily armoured vehicle with multiple laser cannons from top to bottom. His mask was Torch, which fires a flamethrower. Vanessa Warfield, the only female member of the Venom team, drove Manta, a Nissan car that could turn into a fighter plane. Her mask is Whip, which fires a powerful laser whip at her enemies. Vanessa is the de facto second-in-command of Venom, and her intelligence is on a par with Miles Mayhem himself. Whenever Miles is incapacitated, she instantly takes command. She seems to be the only person whom Miles trusts to pilot Switchblade. Bruno Shepard drove Stinger, an orange Pontiac that turns into a tank. His mask is Magna Beam that can fire a magnetic beam. Nash Goria, stereotypical nerd, drove Outlaw, a black oil tanker which turned into a mobile defense unit. His mask, Powerhouse, could multiply his strength tenfold. In the comics, Nash was a new recruit for Mask, but was revealed to be a spy for Venom. Floyd Malloy drove Vampire, a red motorbike which turned into a fighter jet. His mask, Buckshot, fired ball bearings. Lester Sludge drove Iguana, an off-road vehicle which turned into a buzzsaw platform attack vehicle. His mask, Mudslinger, fired mud. Throughout Season 1, Miles Mayhem and Venom didn't know the secret identities of the Mask agents, but in Season 2, without any explanation, he knew Matt Tracker and the other Mask agents by their names. It is possible that in between the end of Season 1 and the start of Season 2, he found out somehow. Season 2 of Mask was very different from Season 1, as now each episode Mask agents and Venom agents competed against each other in races to win valuable prizes. Of course, Venom continually cheated in their attempts to win the races, but Mask would always prevail. Sadly, the Season 2 racing series wasn't as popular as Season 1, and the racing series only lasted for 10 episodes. In Season 2, it was revealed that Miles Mayhem had a twin brother, called Maximus Mayhem, who along with his brother Miles drove Buzzard, a Formula 1 racing car that splits into a drone-controlled jet and two smaller attack motorcycles, each piloted by one of the Mayhem brothers. Maximus's mask is Deep Freeze, that fires a freezing beam, while Miles' mask was Flexor, which fired a flexible energy shield. In the comics, the mask technology was created by Matt Tracker's younger brother Andy Tracker and Miles Mayhem, but Miles murdered Andy and stole half of the mask prototypes and founded Venom. Matt Tracker, vowing to bring Miles Mayhem to justice, founded the Mask team to counter the Venom threat. The cartoon only briefly touched upon the fact that Miles Mayhem co-created the mask technology, where Matt Tracker mentioned very briefly that Miles helped create the mask technology, but being a Saturday morning cartoon, Matt never mentioned that his younger brother Andy was murdered by Miles Mayhem. There was also romance in the Mask cartoon. In the first season it was hinted that maybe Gloria was a love interest for Matt Tracker, but in her only appearance in Season 2, it was hinted that Gloria was in love with Buddy Hawks. There also seemed to be some romance brewing between Vanessa Warfield and Brad Turner. Had there been a third season to Mask, maybe these two couples' relationships would have been explored, but that was not to be, as Mask was cancelled after Season 2. As with many cartoons of the 80s, Mask had public service announcements. These usually involved Matt Tracker's adoptive son, Scott Tracker, and his robot, T-Bob. These public service announcements were to teach children about certain hazards. The most well-known Mask PSA was the not to accept lifts from strangers, as they might be a child abductor. But my favourite public service announcements was the ones involving the Venom agents, as these particular PSAs gave some insight into the lives of the Venom agents on their off time, and showed that despite all the sniping and bickering between them in the episodes, that deep down they were all buddies and actually hung out with each other on their days off. These public service announcements also showed a softer side to Miles Mayhem, as he warned Lester Sludge not to take his electric radio into the bath, as it could electrocute him. The Venom PSAs also showed that crime does pay, as Miles Mayhem lived in a big mansion. It is also implied that the Venom agents may all live there with Miles, as Lester Sludge is shown to be well at home in Miles' house. Overall, Mask was an 80s gem of a cartoon, and I recommend it to anyone not already familiar with it. If you haven't seen it before, I recommend you check it out. And after all, illusion is the ultimate weapon.